This is what an anti-migrant protest looks like in Mexico. There's anger and waving of Mexican flags and signs like this one, which translates to "No to the invasion." Now a new poll by the Washington Post and the leading Mexican newspaper, Reforma, suggests attitudes in Mexico may have hardened since this protest last November over the arrival of a migrant caravan in Tijuana. 64% of Mexicans, nearly two-thirds, say they believe people fleeing Central America into Mexico are a burden that threatens to take jobs and benefits from Mexican citizens. 55% want them deported versus just 33% who believe Mexico should give them temporary asylum or residency. Just 7% support them settling permanently. So Mexico is seeing some of the same nationalist sentiments that we've seen in the United States and other countries.
So Mexico is now complaining about immigrants coming into their country and taking jobs. They're also complaining about gentrification. The word gentrification. Well, that word gentrification in America means something to black folks because black folks know all too well about gentrification, about coming into our communities with money, right? Building up the community, which was once a ghetto or a slum, right? And then overpricing everything and pricing out the people that's been living there for years. We know all about it. But now Mexico is complaining about Americans, or what they call gringos, coming down there, opening up businesses, boosting up the economy too high where the regulars that live there can no longer live there. And they want the Americans out. They're protesting, rioting in the streets, burning down stores. They're doing everything. The Americans has to go. And they also talk about these neighboring states, these neighboring countries of the Guatemalans and Salvador and all these other groups that's coming in. They don't want them there because they deal with a lot of racism in Mexico too. There was a Mexican man on that was on TikTok talking about the way that they do things with the little short indigenous Mexicans, the darker ones. They're discriminated against the more Spaniard, taller looking ones, right? Because they deal with colorism also in Mexico, right? So this is what this one man was saying. Check this out.
So what a lot of people don't know is that Mexico is bordered with Guatemala.
Yes.
Okay? We don't let them in. So the same thing that America does to Mexico, we do to Guatemala. Okay? It just, the news is CNN, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, New York Post, they're never going to show you that. But just so you know, Mexico is extremely racist. So we have what are like
Guatemalans,
even to its own Mexicans. So you got to remember, Mexico was dominated by Spaniards. The only reason I look the way I look is because I'm 65% Spaniard.
Yeah.
Mexicans, like real Mexicans, or which is known as Mexica, not Mexico, Mexica, are 5'4", super dark with big noses and the heads pushed back. Aztecs and Mayans,
like Indians,
like Indians. Yes. Well, we're natives, right? Yeah. So we're blended. So the reality is, in Mexico, till this day, if you are not light complected, somewhat tall, you're frowned upon. To this day.
Now, black folks for a long time have been complaining about the Democratic Party by allowing all of these immigrants to come into America, because when you bring them into America, you flush them right into the black community. They come into the black community, they start taking up jobs, you start seeing them laying around the streets, all in your community, everywhere, right? And the government is also giving them free places to live. They're giving them money. They're giving them all kinds of things, right? And a lot of people are illegals, but they're giving them temporary stay. They come here, they make babies, and now the babies are citizens while they're here illegally. There's a lot of things that go on, but we have to endure them because you throw them in our communities that we've been living in way before they got here, right? So now the Mexicans is complaining the same way. So this Mexican woman, she was online, and she was explaining in Mexico what gentrification is, right? But black folks, like I said, we already know all too well. And I want to remind you, a lot of Cubans and Mexicans voted for Donald Trump because they felt like the government was giving these Venezuelans all this special, these special privileges when they was bringing them here to America. So they got jealous, right? And they went and voted for Trump. But we was looking like, well, wait a minute. When y'all came, they put y'all in our communities, especially on the East Coast. You got Mexicans walking around every goddamn where now in Philadelphia. right? That's something that you never saw 5 years ago. But now they everywhere and they coming with money, right? So check this out. This is what this woman was explaining.
Gentrification is colonization. Let's talk about it. Recently, there's been protests in Mexico City because of the amount of people from America that have brought over their money and started their own businesses, gentrifying, making everything more expensive in parts of Mexico. Now, of course, there's some people in the comments, like Americans, being like, oh, yeah, I guess they also hate when immigrants come here and take their homes and jobs. That's not what gentrification is, Ted. Gentrification is when you bring money from your country into a different country, you raise up the prices of everything because you're buying top-notch houses, you're building businesses, you're trying to basically push people that have lived in that area out of there because you're making everything too fucking expensive. And at the same time, you're going around complaining about the locals and the culture, people being up too late, making noise near your new condo that you bought in your retirement in Mexico. And I think we're going to see more of this. We're going to see more people in Mexico fighting back, pushing back against people in America, whether they're well-intended or not, coming in and doing so. Because if you're going to go into another country, as you guys like to say, you got to assimilate, you got to learn the culture. But for some reason, Americans think that they're the exception. They could go to these places, make their own areas, and that's fine and that's normal. But if hardworking immigrants want to come to America, build jobs, do their own thing, just be a part of their own communities, literally away from you, then they're an issue. But Janice and her husband can come and move somewhere to Mexico because it's so cheap for retirement and then complain that the restaurant near them that's been there for 3 generations is too loud at night and try to get them shut down. That's gentrification. Now, if Janice and her husband moved there and they understood that things have been around and people have been around there longer than they have, that's not a problem. But Janice and her husband going and try to police everywhere, build these businesses, not include the actual local community and people, that's not good.
Well, everything that this woman is saying, black folks been saying forever. Because I keep trying to tell you guys, when these Mexicans come into the community today, they're coming in with money, right? Now, mind you, this is what she's saying, because I've been explaining this with gentrification. These Russian small hats, they come over, they buying up all kinds of property, right? And businesses and everything, and they coming in with money. They're not coming in poor. These Latinos, when they come in, if I brought you to Philadelphia and I took you to South Philly, the whole south side of South Philly now is owned by Mexicans. But I thought that these was poor migrants coming in. No. The Dominicans, when they come in, they washing all that drug money. They buying stores up on every corner. These people came in and buying a whole city up. So, and they're redoing. So I'm going to tell you right now, Philadelphia, the black community, in the next 10 years is going to be all Spanish. Because they own everything now. They came in and brought the Dominicans, the Mexicans, they buying it all up. They coming in and buying it all up. So what is she saying? So there's the brother Donnie on time. He's been covering most of this. He went online and responded to that, and he said this.
Yesterday, 4th of July, they had a protest in Mexico against American migrants, and it turned violent where they start attacking American businesses. Check this out. So their complaints against the American migrants is gentrification. They're draining the resources of Mexico. Here's one. Americans in Mexico should learn Spanish. Americans in Mexico should learn Spanish. Now, when America expressed these same concerns, Americans are the villains, or have phobias. Oh, you shouldn't say that. But when Mexico says this, is long live Mexico, we support Mexico. And if you look at the numbers, there's over 10 million plus Mexican immigrants in the United States. 4 million of them live in Southern California, and a high percentage of them is receiving some form of government assistance. Let's not talk about Medi-Cal, which is Medicaid. That's California versions of Medicaid. We want to discuss gentrification. Try finding a place in Los Angeles or Southern California, especially if it's a lot where they're saturated at, where it's predominantly them. Even if you could afford the rent, most likely they're not going to rent to you. And it'd be like 8 to 10 of them living in a 1-bedroom apartment when in Los Angeles, it's supposed to only be 3 people to a 1-bedroom apartment. If you try to do that as an American, you will get reported. Now, the Americans that live in Mexico, you got to show proof that you're bringing in $2,600, at least $2,600 a month. So you're showing them you're not going to live off their government. If you don't have that, you have to have $43,000 in the bank to even go over there.
So now, with all that being said, you had some black people that is living in Mexico City, and they have like a lot of good things to say about the Mexicans and their experiences in Mexico. Some are saying that they're not experiencing racism. People may come up to them and look at them. Now, I'm a person that's been to Mexico about 15 times. And all the times I've been to Mexico, I've always had a great time. You know, they might run up to you. You know, they ask if they take pictures. You know, they'll run up to you and look at you, ask you where you from. I had a picture where I gave. I went to a village. I gave a Mexican guy my shoes. Everybody thought that I was 50 Cent or Mike Tyson. They kept calling me what they was calling me, I forgot. Yeah, but they was calling me something, but they kept thinking I was 50 Cent or Mike Tyson the whole time. It was funny, man. You know, whenever I go over there. But there was another woman, and she was talking about blacks are not the reason for gentrification in Mexico, and she was giving her experiences. She said this.
I'm moving to Mexico City in about 8 weeks, and I'm already getting comments from people telling me either not to move there or telling me that I'm contributing to gentrification by relocating. I'm sorry, but I think that is complete and utter bull. African Americans are not the reason why Mexico is experiencing a gentrification crisis, first of all. I think it's really interesting that people expect African Americans specifically to stay in a country where our ancestors were enslaved. I'm a black girl from the South, so I know for a fact that my ancestors were not only enslaved in this country, but they were probably enslaved not very far from where I live. I think Black Americans specifically have always been expected to stay and tough it out in a country that has literally taken so much from us. Our current sitting president didn't even acknowledge Juneteenth. And you expect me to either stay in this country or go back to Africa. Insanity. I've been to Mexico and everybody was super kind and super welcoming. There's also Black Latinos, there's Black Mexicans. So there is a demographic of Black folks in the country already. And especially as a Black woman, we don't even have the resources to gentrify a country. That's another demographic of people, no shade. And while I will totally be respectful and intentional about my move to Mexico, I do not think it's fair to tell people, especially Black folks, that they're not welcome in a country when the original country that they're from treats them like shit.
You know what, the truth of the matter is, I felt my safest self. And safe is relative, but I mean safe to be my authentic self, safe to express myself in the way that I really desire to express myself. That feeling of safeness, I've only felt outside of the United States. And me living in Mexico as an African American woman, I've never felt discrimination from the Mexican people. When I have felt discrimination, it's been from Americans.
Well, you know, America is looked at as the place where it's the land of milk and honey. And a lot of countries around the world don't like America for multiple reasons. Number one, especially if you live in Central, South America, the Caribbean, American government has been responsible for destabilizing these countries to keep them from being able to compete against them, and rival nations like communists and all these other countries coming in and commandeering those countries so they can have direct access to American soil, right? You know, Cuba, maybe, you know, going into Mexico, Honduras, and all these places, right? Especially during after World War II and stuff like that. So when you look at South and Central America, a lot of fruit production comes from there. Oil, there's gold, there's all kinds of resources there where these people can nationalize these things, take it over, and it can become part of their economy where they can compete against America as a world power. So America keeps these countries destabilized and keep these countries dependent upon America, right? So with that, in turn, these countries look at America as a place to run to make a better living, because you guys have decimated the economy in my country. So they don't have any respect for the complaints that Americans have, because they say, hey, man, you have a house, 2 cars, you got a job, you make $30 an hour on your job. Man, I don't want to hear that, man. I live in the shanty. Or we come here, we pick berries for $10, $11. Maybe we work for $300 a month. So that's the way that they view things. They're not caring about none of that stuff that we're talking about. But what happens is these governments put us at each other. The locals of these countries coming in from Venezuela, Argentina, Buenos Aires, Honduras, Costa Rica, Mexico, all these places they coming in from, Jamaica, Haiti, they got us fighting with each other where really the real culprits is the governments that's causing these issues. And they're laughing all the way to the bank, ching ching. So, and this is what's going on, man, when you understand the destabilizations of countries and what they do doing with policies, man. So this thing is bigger than what people are made to believe it is, because we're looking at things on a surface level and not looking at things for what it actually is. The fruit industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, man. And like I said, they get these imports. So this thing is like it's a lot that go on, man. We already know what happened in Haiti. We know what happened over there in Cuba. We know it's just a lot. It's a lot. We know what goes on in Honduras and all these different countries, man, through policies, and why they open up the borders to allow so many of these immigrants come in through U.S. policies. And when they do come in and leave off those lands, what happens to the lands that they actually abandon to come to America? These are questions that nobody ever asked. So Mexicans are complaining about gentrification over there, but this is something that black folks been complaining about for a long time, because through U.S. policy, when they come here, guess where they dump them at? Right in our communities. So we understand all too well about gentrification, because we went through a crack era, and we watch these $5 crack shacks turn into $350,000 and $2 million homes overnight. We've seen it happen. So we all know way too well. And a lot of these are white folks or immigrants coming in with money, high class immigrants coming in with money, buying up everything and pricing everybody out. So I'm going to cut this video short here. If you made it this far in the video, hit that like button, subscribe to Street Media TV, leave your comments in the comments section. Let me know what you guys think. And remember, I love y'all. Till the next time, peace.